Forget Donkey Kong Jr. It's Junior's Revenge on the Coco Show, episode 34, live at Boat Fest. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Coco Show. I'm John.
Hi, John. And I'm Aaron.
And now.
And I'm Curtis.
Hey!
And today, we are going to discuss Junior's Revenge.
Oh, man.
Now, Aaron, you have a son,
That's true.
okay? Has he ever plotted revenge on you?
Oh, yes. He's very vengeful, actually. I hope he's not hearing this right now. I can't see him in
No,
here.
he's out playing on his phone.
Oh,
Don't worry.
man. Yeah, he'll get you. And the thing is, for the slightest little thing, he'll get brutal revenge. Like, for example, if he's in the other room and I go, hey, look, bedtime in like 5 minutes. And then I say, okay, right, bedtime right now. Just as a joke. I'll hear these footsteps. He'll run through the house and just Jimmy Snoop jump on me, smash right in the bed, smack me with stuff. Yes, very vengeful boy.
Has he ever used the glove on you?
No. Yeah, he has used the bat. That's true.
I was just going to ask, did your brother Brent teach him all these tricks? Or?
Well, Brent was vengeful too. I know it's stunning. He was quite a vengeful boy. His favorite gimmick was I'd be sitting there and he'd be like, Mom, Aaron hit me. I'd be like, what? And then I'd get in trouble and get pulled out of there. That was his move. So yeah, there you go.
Now, we have a very special guest with us, L. Curtis Boyle. And Curtis, have you ever taken sweet revenge on any of your enemies? I'm talking about Coco Crew, of course.
I have. I don't know if I should talk about some of this stuff.
You definitely should. That's the signal that you should.
Some of it was pretty illegal at the time,
Well-
and probably still would be illegal.
I can't believe that. Thank you, buddy.
I guess the one thing I will mention, there were some people that really ticked me off when I was a teenager, and I got a hold of their parents' credit card scans from like going to Radio Shack and stuff like that. And I would just spend a lot of money on CompuServe, which is about $20 an hour over a weekend with 5 of us on the account. Racked up their bills pretty high.
Oh my goodness.
Of course, that's back in the day when they used to just put credit card numbers on everything, all the
Oh,
receipts.
yeah. No, they just
and
did the carbon
everything.
thing.
Yeah.
They threw them on the garbage. You could take your pick, type thing.
There's nothing
So.
more hilarious than grand larceny.
That doesn't apply when I'm here in the States, right? Like, it
Oh,
doesn't
no,
bother
of
me at all?
course
Okay,
not.
good.
There'll be some men here to escort you to your car.
Statute of limitations on the drive.
Yeah.
Now, Aaron, before we get into, and Curtis, before we get into the Coco Show proper, we need to give a shout out to the Coco Game Selection Committee. These guys choose all the games we play and are pillars of the Coco community. Big Tandy thank you to Robert, Alan Murphy, and Steve Rasmussen. Now, Aaron and Curtis, it's time to get into Junior's Revenge. Aaron, what can you tell us about this game?
You know, this is what I remember playing back in the day on the old Coco, because I'm a big fan. This may stun you. I'm a big Donkey Kong guy, and a Donkey King guy. And so I also like Donkey Kong Jr. Cool game. In fact, I thought it was a great game, actually. Almost as good as Donkey Kong. And I like the fact that they took a slant that you wouldn't have expected in a part 2 of a series. You could have just made more levels Donkey Kong, and that would have worked. But in fact, they probably damaged the series by doing it that way, by trying to do, establish different characters. But I thought it was really cool. And so when Donkey Kong Jr. came to the Coco, sorta, I was pretty excited because, I was a big fan, and I already had Donkey Kong in the machine. So this was released in '83 by an outfit cunningly titled Computerware.
Old company.
Yeah, they were around for a long time, and the author of this one was a fellow named B.J. Chambliss. Have you talked to B.J. before, Curtis?
I did contact him via email when I was doing the text interviews back in the early 2000s, but I've lost track of him.
So this guy, I looked around to see what he'd done, and I had to dig around for some of this stuff. Some of it I knew. So I'm going to go through his quick list here, but there's a funny one here. He did a game called Major Istar Under the Doomed Sea. That sounds like a fun one.
Graphic adventure game.
Yeah, Blockhead, that one we played. Ghost Attack, Escape 2012, in that distant futuristic year of 2012. Storm, Rail Runner, and then this is the one I thought was interesting, Aquanaut 471. I don't know if you've tried this one, Curtis, but this one also got a port on the QL,
Really?
the dreaded QL system that we covered on ARG Presents. So that's kind of interesting that you see a Coco game that got ported over to another machine like that. So I've never played any of these except for Blockhead. So I can't tell you what all this, what he did. Now, when I played this one, I played this back in the day on the old Coco, on the old tape. I had the tape of it and had it on disc. But I can tell you that I had no end of trouble getting this to work this week with my SD solution. Do you have any? Because you ended up getting it working, Curtis. What did you end up doing to get this thing working?
There's a bad copy in the archive. I'm actually going to have to fix it properly. But basically, whoever kind of took the copy protection and the auto start off ended up not setting the graphics mode fully, so we'd come up with this weird text and stuff instead of actually kicking in. So it's just like one store I got to add to it. But.
Yeah. So thankfully, there's the guy. We actually had it here at the event. I ended up having to emulate this. I couldn't even get it to work on the Mister either. So clearly, there was a problem. Now, before we get into this too deeply. Have either one of you guys played? I'll start with you, Boat. Have you played a lot of Donkey Kong Jr., the arcade version?
I have not played a lot of the arcade version, but I've played a lot of the Nintendo Entertainment System version of it.
It's good.
Yeah,
that one's quite good. It's got all 4 levels as well, doesn't it?
It does.
Now, do you think that was a solid port from the arcade?
Absolutely. I went for years until I really got into MAME thinking that it was just. I mean, it was almost transcode like quality because in my small mind. The things like aspect ratio and stuff didn't exist.
Sure.
And I thought, well, yeah, this is it. And even on the NES box, those of you that are familiar with the black box series of games, it actually says Donkey Kong Jr. and then in cursive writing it says the original on there, making you think, yeah, this is it. This is it. So,
I played that. It's much like Donkey Kong there. It's quite good.
Yeah.
They did a great job. Now, did you play this much in the arcade? This is in your wheelhouse.
I did play in the arcade. Obviously, the Nintendo one is made by lazy transcoders. It's not worth anything.
No good.
No, actually, the Nintendo version was quite well too. But yeah, I did play the arcade game. And like you were mentioning before, the way they flipped the tables where they reversed the roles, that was my favorite part because they didn't just do a sequel with more levels. You actually took on the part of the ape's son now, trying to rescue the father from Mary.
Yeah, if you ever played this, you don't know the backstory. Of course, in the original Donkey Kong kidnapped Pauline, and you had to go rescue her. Jumpman. In this version, Jumpman, actually a couple of Jumpmen, have taken Donkey Kong hostage. So now it's the son's turn. So now the Jumpmen are evil, the Marios are evil, and you've got to be the guy that goes and gets Dad out of jail effectively. The game has 4 very distinct levels in it, and they actually managed to pull these off. I was kind of surprised that they got them in here. I will say this game is graphically impressive in the arcade. I mentioned much like Donkey Kong in its time, it was a beauty, And you've got to think that this game for the Coco came out in '86, so it's not like there's a huge gap in between the two games. I thought they did a pretty decent job graphically with this. I mean, as best as you can do. What do you fellas think about the way it looks?
The way it looks, I'd say it's probably about as good as you could make it look on the Coco 1 and 2.
Yeah. I should mention this. I mean, in a perfect world, this runs on all the Cocos.
Right. Now, if we're talking about the Coco 3 version, the Coco 3 version does look better than the Coco 1 and 2, but they could have made the Coco 3 version look a lot more close.
Yeah, we should mention that there are really 2 versions, sort of. Junior's Revenge was the original game that was released, and then there was Return of Junior's Revenge, which is sort of an updated, like recolored version for the Coco 3. That one I haven't tried. I've seen footage of it, but I didn't try it. But it looks good. But from a lot of what I read, it doesn't play well. So you guys, what do you guys think in terms of its play? I'm assuming you think the second one's better. The first one's better.
Well, to me, the games play identically.
Oh, really?
They're just a graphic update.
Okay, well, there you go. Then there you go. So
to give a bit of a history on that, the Junior's Revenge, the Coco 1 and 2 version came out in '83, so pretty close after the original arcade version. And it also came out after Donkey King, which is its one big fault there, because if it came out before that, it would have been an okay game, and it has all 4 levels, which is good. The graphics, shapes, and stuff look pretty good, as you can see on the screen here, but it's kind of choppy. It's almost like tile-based. It's not smooth like Donkey King tried to do. And Return of Junior's Revenge was the very first third-party Coco 3 game released, literally a month after the Coco 3 got out. So people were learning, how does this new graphics chip work? How does the MMU work? And all this other kind of stuff. It was a rush. It was a direct port of the Coco 1 and 2 one. They just expanded the graphics 16 color and left the sound routines identical in the whole bit. So it was a bit of a rush job to get to the market.
I will say that it is very unique for a Coco 1 and 2 game to have the cinematic intro sequence that this game has, where you actually see Junior sort of, it's different than the arcade version. It's completely different, which is cool. We talk about ports that kind of have to go a different way, but there is an opening cinematic. Now, here's the downside. You better hope that you like watching that cinematic, because after every game over screen, You're watching literally a 30-second intro of Donkey Kong Jr. lumbering across and watching the thing go up to the top.
Yeah.
Pushing it up.
You also get to choose if you want to play a real game or not, which is interesting at the beginning. Your junior appears, and you can pick which way you want to go to, like a proper game or a practice game. Which that was sort of the same gimmick that was in Donkey King, where you could have basically I think it was unlimited lives, with them, it didn't keep scores.
Well, the difference on this one though is that like most of them just said, "Here's practice, here's real play. Just pick one." This one you actually have to walk your guy over and jump at
He
it.
has to physically jump to the.
the level he wants to
make
play.
you work for it a little bit. That's the way I like to do it. Of course, you've got the original boards from the arcade. Some of these boards aren't. These are complicated levels. I mean, this isn't easy to do. And one thing I liked about the arcade, and it carries over, is you've got distinct levels. You've got levels that test your platform jumping. They've got also levels that test your hand-eye, that second level with the chains. Then the last level is really your jumping timing. They do a good job of mixing it up, which is, again, I think the arcade version has more diverse levels than even Donkey Kong did. And so I always thought that was fun. But a lot of people, that turns them off because some of the levels they're almost overwhelming when you look at them. But I mean, they play, having played both, and you're right, this isn't smooth. There's no doubt about that. But it does, given the limitations of the system, they squeeze quite a bit of it out to get this to be all there.
Now, Curtis, I've got a question for you. You said when you were describing the graphics of this game, you said they were almost tile-based. Can you expand upon what that means a little bit?
Well, basically, it's like a grid of tiles, so you got every shape, say, 8 pixels apart. You can see, like, on here, they're not jumping by single pixels, they're jumping by basically a whole byte, because it's basically 4 pixels per byte. And they just did that because it's easier to program that way. But it looks choppy.
There you go. And, of course, to your real refined games, like your Donkey Kings, where they could overcome that, or the Sailor Man, they can get past that. Of course, it takes a lot of prowess. That's not knocking BJ here. He
cranked out a lot of stuff.
Yeah, so. I do want to mention that for Chambliss, we never could confirm, and Curtis backed me up on this. We don't know about his involvement with Return of Junior's Revenge. We don't know if that was him that did it or not, do we?
Yeah, I mean, the fact that sound routines are identical, the shapes, except they're expanded to 16 color, pretty well identical. I'm pretty sure it was either his code or somebody just took his code and just patched it up.
You think someone could have gotten hold of that code? Do you remember who shipped the Return of Junior's Revenge?
It was Computerware as well.
Same people, so they would have probably had access to it.
And Computerware had been around since like the mid-'70s. They used to do stuff with 6800 before the 6809 processor even existed. So they were around for a long time.
In case if you're watching at home or here live, you can see the difference here, and it's, I mean, that right there tells you a tale right there. I mean, the color fidelity and the way things look is much nicer with the new version. I'm gonna really have to give this a shot.
And that tile-based thing I was talking about there, you can kind of see here because with the 16 color screen, you get basically 2 pixels per byte. So it's moving the same byte ratio. It looks smoother because there's less actual pixels to go through because there's more color.
There you go. Now we've got to wait for the third game, the Donkey Kong series, to get ported to Coco. Then we'll have something there. So I got to ask you guys. So we all think the game in the arcade was good and fun. I mean, did you have fun playing this boat?
This is a different game. I mean, it looks the same.
Yeah.
And the levels look the same, but the way that you play this game is incredibly different because of the way that you move. The thing that Donkey Kong Jr. does is climb on vines.
Yeah.
Okay. And when you climb on a vine, you often got to deal with enemies that are coming from beside you or from above you, climbing down the vine in the opposite direction. When you play Donkey Kong Jr., if you want to avoid an enemy that's on an adjacent vine, all you have to do is not hold on to that vine. But in Junior's Revenge, you actually have to let go of the vine that the enemy's coming down on and also shift your body to the other side of the vine. And that adds a whole nother level of complexity to the game that's not present on the original arcade game. A lot of times arcade ports to the computers are easier than the arcade game. You know, we just talked about the Gauntlet on the ST. If you play the arcade version of Gauntlet and you play the ST version back to back, I mean, the arcade version is so much more difficult. There's tons of games that are like that. This is one of the few games where I had a hard time getting off the second board of Donkey Kong Jr. Just because of the whole vine direction mechanic thing.
I found it hard to climb, to be honest with you, and I've also found that, you know, the way it moves. Like Donkey Kong Jr. is very fluid in the arcade, and the timing, there's a fluidity to it that plays into the timing because you know as the thing moves, it's constant. When stuff moves like it does in this, I found it more difficult to time jumps.
Yeah.
And so between grabbing vines and doing simple stuff that I could do in the arcade a million times, I would miss stuff here. I mean, and it was annoying because I was good enough to do it. I just, I don't know, there was a malfunction somewhere.
It's worth noting too that the arcade game, is pretty generous in terms of if you jump nearby a vine, you'll sort of grab onto it.
Yeah.
In this game, you have to align Junior's hands directly under the vine and then jump straight up to make him attach.
It's basically pixel perfect jumping to get on the vine.
Yeah. So
it is harder.
What do you about with boat? Like, it's not the best gameplay experience for you on this?
Yeah, it's a bit rough. I mean, they tried to do as good as they did with the tile-based graphics, but that meant you had to jump from the exact right spot to grab a vine or a pole or something like that. You couldn't be off a couple pixels like the arcade.
I will say, with all that said, I thought it was a good try, and it's something that's, I'm not saying never play it. Give it a shot. You can get into it. And I will say, back in the day when this was the only way I could play Donkey Kong Jr. at the house, I was tickled pink because it's not like they were porting Donkey Kong Jr. to everything. It wasn't like Donkey Kong where everything got it. Junior didn't get ported all that much to like the secondary systems that weren't, Nintendo, and so and some of the ports on those were much worse than this. So yeah, I always thought this was a pretty good.
It is
effort.
worth noting. I don't know if you mentioned this or not, Aaron, but in the title screen, your enemy is not Mario. The enemy is Luigi. Luigi is kidnapped.
It's funny. Well, it's not Mario in Junior. Technically, it's Jumpman. They never really name him. So yeah, it is. They do mention that. It's poor Luigi gets thrown under the bus here.
and I will say that I can't remember. I read this somewhere online. Some review said that they actually thought that's where Mario Brothers came from. Is that you were Mario in the first game, in the second game you were fighting against Luigi, and then in Mario Brothers, the two brothers came together to join forces. So.
There you go. I like to look up when I look up for reviews for Coco games. I often go to icepeople.net. I like that guy.
There are ice people over there.
Well, hey.
Ice Canada, people. Right?
Yeah.
It must be. Anyway, he doesn't review every Coco game, but it's funny, he reviewed Junior's Revenge and Return of Junior's Revenge, and I thought I'd flip them real quick. So, Ice People gives Junior's Revenge a B+. He says, this Donkey Kong Jr. clone by Computer Shack is nearly up to the awesome standards set by Tom Mix's Donkey King, including all 4 screens plus the animations in the arcade game, great gameplay, and top-notch graphics. But it falls a bit short, being a little slow and jumpy in the animation. It's pretty much the way we thought it played, but he gives it a B+. Now, he also happened to look at Return of Junior's Revenge, which he gives a D+.
Oh.
This is what again, I didn't play this, so he says, even giving this game a few breaks due to circumstances, primarily being rushed to market as the first major third-party Coco game, just like Curtis said, this unauthorized port of Donkey Kong Jr. is slow, ugly, and not much fun. Looking at a screenshot in a promo copy promising all 4 levels, it's easy to get taken in, but those freeze frames don't look nearly as convincing in action, lurching rather than gliding through the motion. Now, so I mean, if these are the 2 same games, it's almost like he praised
here's the thing.
one and crushed the other.
By the time that this came out on the Coco 3, people could see what the Coco 3 was capable of.
So you think he was just disappointed?
Yeah, because I mean, look at a game like Rampage. You load that up and you play it, and you're like, yeah, this thing can do arcade quality, approaching arcade quality stuff. And then when you see what they've done with Donkey Kong Jr., like, oh, that's
I hadn't thought of it that way, and I bet you're dead on there. He probably was disappointed. Just like when you get your new console, you expect a certain amount of polish.
Right.
Yeah, he's a little bit off in the time though, because like he mentioned, that was the first third-party game. So I mean, all we had was a couple Radio Shack carts that had come out at that point. Nobody had done the third-party, so we were still learning the hardware.
Yeah,
I would give it a little bit a higher score than that because it was a rush job to get it out. But yeah, it definitely didn't show what the Coco did.
Did we get any Discord action on this?
We did. C64J writes, overall, I like the Donkey Kong Jr. clone. The Coco 3 version had good graphics and sound. It played slower than the Coco 1 and 2 version, but was graphically much better. The slower pace of Return of Junior's Revenge did not bother me and was worth the other upgrades. I give the game 7 out of 10. The original I gave 6 out of 10, but still a good game for the Coco 1 and 2.
Very good, very good.
Yeah. Personally, myself, I would flip those 2 scores.
Mm-hmm. Now, Curtis, do you have any final thoughts on Junior's Revenge?
Like I said, it was rushed to market. The fact they actually got like all 4 screens and stuff was nice. The Coco 3 version in particular was rushed to market. The other one actually came out pretty soon. And it would have been probably rated higher in general, except the fact it came after Donkey King, which was kind of like a pinnacle one, no matter what Vote says. But, it was one that was really did start to show what the Coco could do, what it was capable if you had a program that was really familiar with the hardware.
Very good.
Do we have anyone in the audience that is either wants to give their thoughts either on the return of Junior's Revenge, or if they have any Donkey Kong Jr. memories of playing in the arcade or on a console or computer?
No one's ever played this on the Coco? Anyone have anything they want to ask or challenge L. Curtis Boyle? Here's your opportunity. He's right up here. He's
No glove fights, please.
He's ripe for the plucking. If he's ever said anything you didn't like or you have a question for him, now's the time. Looks like you're off the hook, Curtis.
All right, well, Aaron and Curtis, it's time to bid a fond farewell to Junior's Revenge. Listeners, we want to hear your feedback. Please feel free to leave us a comment on YouTube, and if you could leave us a review on your podcast service of choice, we'd really appreciate it. We release this show in both audio podcast and video format on YouTube at bit.ly/The Coco Show, and we record live on Twitch at twitch.tv/AmigosRetroGaming. If you want to support our show, just visit patreon.com/The Coco Show. We do have a goal up there. If we can get to $200 a month in Patreon support, The Coco Show will go from a monthly show to a weekly one, which would be super Coco awesome. And that leads us to our Coco Show supporter roll call. Thanks to the man on my left, L. Curtis Boyle, Graham W. Vebke, Buttons, and William Becker. If you like our format and you want to hear more, feel free to check out our other shows, Amigos, Everything Amiga, Our Sinclair, An American Take on the ZX Spectrum, the Atari ST Show, 1200XL, and ARG Presents, where Aaron and the Brent spin the wheel and make the deal. All these shows can be found on the Amigos Retro Gaming YouTube channel or at anchor.fm/Amigos Podcast. Aaron, what are we going to be playing next time on the Coco Show?
Let's see. It looks like Color Robot Battle.
Man, gonna have to flex the fingers for that one.
You want to give us a quick bit of insight on what this is?
This is a programming game, so you actually do these little, it's like a mini AI thing where you program your two different players, program their different robots, like, move forward 10, scan forward, try to fire if you see
like
something.
the Big Track.
Otherwise, rotate 45, and it's
All right.
It's a programming challenge between two. You just let the two little AIs run and see who wins.
Can you play two players at it?
It's pretty well mandatory, 2 players.
Well, both.
You guys will have to get together for this one.
Prepare to be battled in color.
Oh, all right, all right. So, and if you're a member of our Discord community, please make sure and play it and leave us a review. Thank you all so much for listening, and let's all do this together, everybody. All hail
L. Curtis Boyle. Adios,
That was all
everybody.
hell, L. Curtis Boyle.
Goodbye, everybody.